Finding slope given a graph. Now, I don't know about you, but I love me some slope. What is slope? There's a couple different ways we can talk about it. Oftentimes, you will hear people say, well, it's just simply rise over run. And while this is like theoretically correct, it's not very mathematical. But what does this tell us? Well, when you rise, you go up, right? So you think of vertical. Whereas when you run straight ahead, right? So you run horizontally. So this is the idea, is that we have vertical change over horizontal change. That's kind of how we think about this. Now, going a step further, if we think about our basic coordinate plane and we think vertically, well, vertically is the y-axis, whereas horizontally is the x-axis. So when I think of vertical change in the numerator, vertical change is the difference between the y values, because change means difference, whereas change in a horizontal would be the difference between the x values. This is the idea, okay? So this is usually our mathematical formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, but we can also think about just the difference between a vertical change over horizontal. So I'm going to show this both ways on the first one. If we have a graph, as we see here, and we want to find the slope, I always start with my leftmost point, and that's down here at -1, -3. And now I think vertical change, right? Slope is a fraction, and the vertical change is in the numerator. So if I want to go up to our second point there at 1, 4, how many steps, right? How many intervals do I have to go to get to 4? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the vertical change is a +7 because I went up. Up is positive. And then from this point here, how many do I have to go over to get to our point? So we're going to go 1, 2. So the horizontal change is 2. So my slope is a +7/2. Now, if you use the formula, right? So let's just say we have x1, y1 down here, and x2, y2. If I do the change in y's, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, well, we know that 2 negatives is a positive, so 4 minus -3 is 7, and 1 minus -1 is 2. Slope, 7/2. So if you have a graph that is well defined, you can count. If your graph kind of stinks, you might still need to use the formula. But either way, you're going to get the same answer. Now, we can look at this one. You can see that it's kind of falling downward, which means our slope is going to be negative. Again, I always start with my leftmost point. So here I have -6, 4, and my rightmost point is 3, -4. All right, so first I've got to figure out, how do I get from the first point to the second point? Well, I'm going to have to go down, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I go down 8. So my vertical change is a -8. My horizontal change, starting here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So my slope would be -8/9. The change in the vertical over the change in horizontal. I am a big fan of actually drawing on the graph. If you just, count and you try to go quickly, it's very, very easy to make a mistake, and we just want to avoid the easy mistakes. It always stinks when you know how to do a problem and then you make a silly mistake, right? Okay, let's do another one. So from here to here, vertical change. There isn't any. The vertical change is 0 because I didn't have to go up or down at all. But I have to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the horizontal change is 5. We know that 0 over anything is just 0. So a horizontal line has a slope of 0. What about a vertical line? Well, doesn't matter which point I start with. Let's start with the bottom one here. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Vertical change, let's call it a +6. Horizontal change, 0. I don't go right or left at all. Hopefully, this warning bells in your head, because you cannot divide by 0. So this is undefined. So a vertical line has an undefined slope. So vertical, undefined. Horizontal, 0. Anything else besides vertical and horizontal is going to have a numerical slope. We often will write our slopes as fractions, even if the fraction would be like -2/1. Yes, I know that's the same as -2, but when you're thinking about your graph, that means it's going to go down 2 and then right 1. So if I have this point, to get to the next one, I go down 2, right 1, and that's my next point. So when you think about slope, think about a fraction.